For those of you that can't tell, I am not Kelly Rosecrans. He is absent this evening, much to my dismay, so here I am running this meeting in his stead. I am Craig Broren, Commission Member. We'll just go around and introduce everybody so that we're all on the same page. And I also mentioned that we have Carolyn Martin joining us by computer.
I'm Mary Wolosik, Staff Member.
Tom Eklund, Commission Member.
Jake Klingforth, Staff Member.
Matt Heidemann, staff.
Dawn DeSorcy, staff.
Kyle Kearns, Community Development Director.
Christine Bartek, Commission Member.
Shane Blazer, Commission Member.
Tom Earl, Alderman, Council Representative.
Fantastic. That is everybody that is in attendance, both in person and virtual. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the August 17th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the August 17th meeting minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Moving
Sorry,
on.
who was the second? Okay.
Moving on to the presentation from Kyle Kearns regarding options for development of updated park plan. Kyle.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with the commission tonight. So I was approached by the Parks Department and have been in conversation with the Parks Department since I was hired as a Community Development Director, replacing Adam Tagan back in March. And we've been discussing opportunities for updating the city's park and rec plan. And so I've been asked today to provide a few examples of the options we have to move forward and a potential recommendation. So that's what I've done here today. I've got a presentation up on the screen and I will jump right in. If at any point you guys have questions, feel free to raise your hand and let me know and we can address them as we move along. And I will try to be fairly brief given it seems like a lengthy night tonight. So comprehensive outdoor rec plans shouldn't be new to anyone. They have several purposes. They've got demographic trends in inventory of parks and the facilities in the city, policy direction regarding bicycling, other recreational opportunities within the parks, planning for maintenance and expansion of facilities, and everything else you see there up on the screen. I think the most important thing to mention is that as a planning document, these plans can assist with budgeting. They can assist with growth, whether it be earmarking dollars in the city's budget for pursuing additional initiatives within the park plan, or again applying for grants to receive like the DNR stewardship funds and other grant opportunities. So they play a pivotal role in general planning within the city, but again, they're specific to the parks and recreational opportunities. Typically, they're updated every 3 to 5 years. Again, we have a plan that is pretty aged. We're a few years beyond its life cycle here, and it's in need of a complete update, and that's what I would advise. I would not necessarily look to just change the demographic information and tweak some of the recommendations. I think it's probably necessary, given we're a few years out, to really look at a full update because of the recent park improvements that we've made, and because of another objective I'll get to here, which is basically that this document should function as a living document, meaning that it doesn't get put on a shelf, but it gets reviewed yearly by this body. We check off objectives that have been met and initiatives, and we add to them on a yearly basis. So again, this isn't meant to be something that has a final, right, it has individual achievement items, but it's never necessarily going to be complete because we're always changing and adding to it and accommodating to the changes and trends in recreation within the community. With that being said, there are really 3 options that we can pursue. One is to perform an in-house update. Number 2 is to partner again with the North Central Regional Plan Commission, which did the previous version. And we are now, Wood County did join the Regional Plan Commission, so we can take advantage of them at a reduced cost, which I'll get into shortly. And the third option is to create an RFP and hire out a consultant. Some factors to consider when making a determination and preparing a plan is, right, the level of detail. What do the goals, objectives, and policies look like? I think it's important to make sure that they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, which is a SMART goal, which again is, it probably isn't new to anyone, but again, I think a SMART goal helps to ensure that these come to fruition and they're not just housed or shelved after they're created. We think about function. Right, again, is this a living document, or is this something that once we're done with it, we brush our hands and move on? What the timeline is for completion, both with the plan, but then the timeline for implementation of the plan itself. The effort that's involved, the staff that are involved, public meetings required, surveys, et cetera, and then the cost. Does anyone have any questions thus far? All right, so again, with the in-house update, I feel as though staff within community development and staff within the Parks Department could certainly lead in this initiative and pursue the creation of a new plan. I think we would follow the DNR outline and some of the existing chapters. And again, I think it would be my goal to ensure that it's a living document. The downside to having it done in-house is the longer timeline. So again, it's something that probably would, have to take priority, and there certainly throughout the course of the year, there are different priorities. And, one of which, right, if something like the Verso announcement occurs within the community, it's things like that you can't predict and can certainly change the timeline of a project such as this, again, dependent upon the priority level that's placed on the project. Also, the effort that's involved, department staff would be organizing public meetings, drafting the document, administering surveys, et cetera. And again, it puts more burden on a staff that already has quite a bit of work to do. So those are some things to keep in mind with this option. The plus to this option is that it's, a minimal external cost. You're not paying a high dollar. You might be covering different fees regarding public meetings and surveys and things of that nature. But again, it's relatively low because it's staff time. The second option is partnering with the Regional Plan Commission. Again, they would likely lead the project. They have done and followed a template very similar throughout the years. Some recent examples I've cited on the screen, and I also have with me today one of them I can certainly pass around. So you all know I can also follow up with Dawn with an email that she can then forward you, linking you to this presentation, as well as to the examples that are referenced if you want to pursue reviewing them further before making a determination. With regards to the plans, again, the timeline, it would likely have to be scheduled or fit within the Regional Plan Commission. And this is something that in my preliminary conversations would probably fall within the middle to the end of next year and could carry over then to 2022 for completion as well. And from an effort standpoint, department staff would likely assist with regards to organizing public meetings, surveys and things of that nature, putting notices up online and so forth. The Regional Plan Commission has provided an estimate of $6,000, which is about half the total project cost. So for them to do it entirely, if we were not a member of the Regional Plan Commission, would be about $12,000 to $15,000. So I think $6,000, possibly with a contingency added on, would be a safe estimate for their assistance in option 2. Last option, option 3, is to create an RFP and hire a consultant. This is something that the City of Stevens Point did when I was with them for the last 8 years. SEH created their plan, and again, it typically follows a similar template. You can cite, again, Stevens Point's recent example, if you'd like, regarding what kind of work SEH has done. And again, the nice thing about an RFP is that you typically will get an array of different responses, and then you can weigh those responses to one another and tweak the plan to your liking based on what consultant fits within that framework. Again, timelines, some could be the most flexible in pursuing this in the near future. Again, some of them, though, however, this may be pushed off. So again, it's you don't really know about the timeline until you really get serious with a consultant. I think staff would likely participate similarly with the Regional Plan Commission in that we could help organize some of the public meetings and post on the website. But it would also involve city staff creating an RFP, going through the RFP process, allowing for a certain time to respond, which can take anywhere from 30 to 60 days, and making a selection. And then the cost, this is the most expensive option, which is about $20,000 for a complete rewrite or a new plan, or $10,000 to $15,000 for an update. I believe Stevens Point was, I think, $17,000, but there's different options that you can add in. So they'll base, a fee based on how many public meetings you have. So if you have an introductory meeting, there'll be a fee. If you have a kind of a midway meeting, there'll be a fee. And then if you have a final presentation, there'll be a fee. So again, you can somewhat structure the contract with the consultant depending upon what the needs are for the community and for the plan. The last thing I want to stress, again, is what I would recommend is, again, being that living document. And that basically comes down to how you create the goals and objectives and policies. And here's an example that I worked on in Stevens Point with the city's comprehensive plan, where we created very measurable, attainable, strategic goals. And then from those, we created several objectives. And through that, we created policy that's easily administered, that has a level of priority tied to it, a timeline tied to it, a cost tied to it, and then a lead department or key partner. So the idea is annually, this could be a document you could reference. It could be in the spring after budget season. You identify what the focus is, what partners need to be included, and then you make recommendations to the applicable staff to pursue those initiatives. And then at the end of the year, you come back to this document, and then you reference what's been done that year. And this can also obviously help with budgeting if there are hardline items that require dollars. That's all I have for you in regards to the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, comments, or concerns. And again, I can summarize all this in an email and provide it to staff that then can email it to you.
Thanks, Kyle. So based on what we heard, you're looking for action from us about going in one direction or another, or are we not to that point yet?
I guess I would leave that up to the commission on what they want to determine. I think you're in a unique position where we're entering the budgeting season. And so I think, by October, you'd probably want to have some sort of direction on what you want to do, especially if there's a cost component to it. So I don't know if there needs to be action tonight. But I think certainly if you're going to be paying dollars for the plan update, you'd probably want to make a determination by October.
So one of the questions that I have, well, the first thing I'd say is, since our existing plan expired in 2016, I think it's something that we should do sooner than later. One of the questions I had with respect to the North Central Regional Plan Commission, which is option number 2 in your presentation, and I had just a second to briefly review this, but it looks as though they survey the community as part of this process?
Yes, I believe they do.
Okay.
And we, the benefit to working with the RPC is that we can increase the level of detail and staff, kind of be a hybrid approach, right? They've got a template, they've got a pretty well-refined protocol and procedures that they use, but if there's something that we'd like to do above and beyond, staff could likely work with them to then implement another, process or procedure. For example, I don't think their goals and objectives are structured the same way that I would like to see them, so that could be something that staff could put in the effort towards to kind of create that living document and that chart, that final chart or spreadsheet where we can weigh those goals and objectives.
And you indicated that you went through a process similar to this in Stevens Point?
We did, and that was a result of, a majority of communities who adopted comprehensive plans after the 1999 legislature, and they basically shelved them. After the requirement for 2010, they were shelved, and people didn't reference the comprehensive plan anymore, and that's not what plans are supposed to do. You're supposed to, actively update them, reference them, pursue them, and so that's what I think, the change I would at least advocate for here, which hopefully would make your jobs easier, especially if there's timelines attached to them over the next 5 years, budgeting components that are attached to them. It's a document that you guys can reference moving forward to help you make decisions.
I guess I'd open it for questions, but I believe that there is a need for a park plan. I think that having, kind of a listing, which we already do, but again, a listing of all of our parks and all of the amenities that they have, and then some ideas or things that we want to do at each of the parks, after having solicited feedback from the community, makes all kinds of sense. It also then informs our decision-making around the budget, in my opinion, about, okay, what do we do next? What's on the list, what takes highest priority, medium priority, low priority, that kind of thing. And then over the period of time, we can work through that plan, and as you indicate, it would be like a little bit a legitimate document. Both a historic reference as well as a roadmap to where we think we want to go. And being it a 4-year period, you're not talking about 40 years, you're talking about something that we'll have to get back to reasonably quickly as well. So I would advocate for adopting some kind of a plan, a move to begin the development of a new plan. And I would also think that we probably need some additional assistance aside from just, if we're going to do it the right way, aside from just city staff. But I think city staff are going to have some significant input and involvement clearly too with respect to goal development and some of the specifics of the plan so we can make it our own and really own it. Tom?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not quite clear, though, so I'd be leaning more towards the option 2 or 3 and getting some outside input into the plan. But I'm not quite clear, is the strategies and objectives come out of that, or do they need to be provided up front?
So I think both. I think, we would look at the existing goals and objectives within the current plan that's expired, and I'm sure many of them would carry forward. But I think from, depending on how the plan is structured, I think there should probably be a pretty heavy public component that allows for, the public to comment on, what's most important to them in our facilities. And then, try to create and strategize new goals and objectives from a little bit of that public input and feedback.
Yeah, obviously there should be public comment, although I think it might be biased depending on where you are. So, and I'm not convinced, I guess, if we here at this commission know everything going on in the city, that might feed into the plan.
Yeah, I think you'd have to, well, I don't know about the intentionality around the surveys, or if you're going to survey the entirety of the city residents or geographic areas or whatever the case may be, but I think that it makes sense that you develop a survey, and that's why you need expertise of working with a company that does this, but you develop a survey that says, hey, here's the park. You folks all know what's there. Well, in case you don't, here's all the things that's there. Here's some of the things we kicked around. Now, what do you think of that? Or what do you think we should do there? And I would see that there'd be that kind of commentary probably on each park. I'm not sure what transpired because when I came, I was on the tail end of the beginning of the renovations of the, riverfront and some of the parks along the river and those aspects. But I would imagine there was community feedback sought on what those look like. And I know that, the workout equipment or the outdoor exercise equipment that was installed down along the river by the hospital there, that came through the commission. We had those conversations, and there was, of course, community input on that topic. But I think that information should inform the plan, And then, of course, there can be additional things or other things that we get engaged in if we have grants or opportunities that, you know, present themselves. I don't think we have to get into the minutia of should we plant 5 trees here and 10 trees there, you know, but you have an opportunity. Once you have your plan and you know, we'll have to take some expertise from city staff based on the surveys. If the surveys are silent, because we weren't sure about that at the time, I think it'd be similar to what we've talked about in this commission in the past. Meaning, what do you guys think? Should we do this? Shouldn't we do this? Where do you know what I'm saying? But I think having that data around community surveys and then, or community responses, and then developing a plan based off of that, using that as your guide, you're going to hit the mark, at least in the short term. And then 4 years later, you might be doing the same thing again or something pretty similar. Matt?
Just a quick comment. I was involved in 2010 when we did the park plan, and at that time, we used North Central. And I don't know, I don't want to throw them under the bus. I don't know if it was them or we just didn't use the right methods, but at the time, the feedback from the public was extremely poor. I mean, it was sparse. We got very, very little input. I believe we had 2 meetings at McMillan Library, and, you know, we'd get like 10 or 12 comments. So I guess I would advocate for a little stronger, we might have to push a little harder to get this out there and get the public aware and more involved, because like I said, last time the input was almost non-existent. And I don't know if that was North Central's, you know, just the methods that they were using or what the problem was, but just a comment.
Is there any other commentary on the topic? Kyle, do you know if you can contact a couple of consultants, you know, such as what was used up in Stevens Point, and ask their questions around community engagement and surveying, and do the same thing with the North Central Regional Plan Commission, and see if we can maybe do a side-by-side comparison? Because that, I mean, part of me says too, you know, you have a community meeting opportunity, you get the word out, as long as you do that in a reasonable fashion, and 3 people show up, well, that means don't worry about it. Do what you think's right, and you know, press on ahead. But the other part of me thinks that when you have an opportunity like we have with regard to looking at parks and amenities, I mean, that's a perfect opportunity for engagement of people that may not be engaged on a multitude of other topics. But you can't share your opinion if you're not reached out to, if you're not aware that the survey is even going on. So I wonder if that would help the commission make a decision, like, what does your surveying process look like, your community engagement around the topic, and see if that's an aspect that maybe tips us in one direction or the other. Because I would much rather not spend 20 grand or 15 grand on a development of a park plan, but frankly, it's better than spending 6 grand and not having it done the way you want it done. Right? I mean, the best park plan is $0. But I don't know that we can get there if we want to legitimately get the feedback from the community and so forth, and you're going to have to typically pay human beings to do that the right way. So I'm curious to know what that process might look like, or if that's information we could find out, maybe kick it around again at another meeting.
Yeah, it's something I can certainly put together, probably a draft email and reach out to some of the consultants. I think some may be a little bit cautious to respond. I think they'll probably reference other projects, and then, you know, we can look at what was done within those other examples from an outreach standpoint. I think generally, though, from what I've seen with regards to consultants is, you know, a lot of what you're paying for in a higher dollar plan is the public outreach, because there's so much time involved, especially given the social media platforms and the other technological platforms that exist to gain feedback, right? Because essentially you're trying to catch the soccer mom that doesn't have time to come to a public meeting, you know, doesn't have time to write an email or go on the city's website, but may have time to jump on an app while they're at the soccer game with their child and comment about what park they're playing soccer at or whatever it may be. And I think that's where I think a consultant might have that expertise on, you know, what platforms are the best to use. But again, you're paying for that. But it's something I can reach out towards. I'm not sure from the Regional Plan Commission standpoint if they have changed at all in their mechanism for public outreach, but I will reach out to the RPC as well to see what methods they use, and then I can try to include that in the summary email as well.
Yeah, if we don't think we will know, or the commission doesn't want to go that route, I've got no problem with it. I'm just tossing that out there as an example.
Craig?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I think to look at both of them, but I think to keep in mind, I think how Kyle started this was being that we're in the budget formation process here with the city, that, to get the money to go either route, because I'd be in favor of doing it, to advance this so we would have the money to do it in this budget cycle. Could we have something by the next meeting, Kyle?
Yeah,
For
I think,
October to make a decision then, and
yep, I should
see what
have,
route to go, see what, I guess, each one would provide us for outreach and, services, whatever, and then we could weigh what the proposal is on, the dollars, what we might be looking at, so. But I think to get this in the motion to, get into doing it, to start it next year, and that is to get it into the budget this year, for that.
When's that process finalized?
The budget,
Yeah,
our
We adopted the third Tuesday in
Tuesday.
November.
council meeting in November.
okay. So if we had some information at our next meeting in October, and we're able to act on providing that direction, at least we'd have a number to shoot from. Because if we were going to go with option 3, which is to, hire a consultant, you're going to do an RFP and hopefully get multiple, people responding as potentially providing that. But I think we could have a not to exceed 20,000 or something like that in our action, and then we'd be okay. So that timeline would be all right. Tom?
Are there any other advantages to option 3 other than maybe the enhanced outreach?
I think the biggest advantage to option 3 is you get to see a different set of procedures, a different, there'll be references to other plans. And while a lot of that staff could probably do, I could start researching different cities within the region and in other states to see who did what plan. And, we could present a number of those to you guys, but, these plans are 50 to 200 pages long. So some of them get in great detail, some of them don't, and that's why when you put out an RFP, there's really no cost. But when you get responses, right, you can then weigh, it's basically a consultant putting in 4 to 5 pages, their best foot forward to get the job and to get the bid. And you can see the different protocols they use. And now it's, or at least coming out of the recession, it's been very competitive. I think, for a strategic plan response that Stevens Point did, they had 13 responses, which is a fair number of responses ranging in cost, and that's a different plan, but, ranging in cost from 15 grand to 80 grand. Now, I don't think, again, this would be nearly that same cost, but I think you'd get a fair number of responses if we did the RFP approach. And there really isn't a downside to doing an RFP, because at the end of the day, if you don't like any of the consultants, you could go back to the RPC option. And I did confirm with Dennis Lawrence at the RPC that they will not bid during the RFP process. So they're kind of an outlier that doesn't bid for these RFPs, but is there as a resource to assist those municipalities that fall within their regional boundary.
Will they do at least like a comparison for us, or some ability to, because what I'm thinking when you're saying that, it's kind of a no-brainer now, just do an RFP, if you don't pick them, you don't pick them, big deal. Might as well get the ball rolling, right?
The downside is the budget though, right? Because if we're gonna put in
Oh, if we're
20
gonna take
grand
60,
in the
yeah.
budget, the RFP, to put an RFP together, a couple weeks, typically have 3 to 4 weeks that the RFP is open, another 3 to 4 weeks for selection, that brings us to almost December. Obviously, we'd have the budget approved by then and would need to know what dollars are gonna be earmarked for the plan.
Yeah, that's a good point. Shane?
But we can also, budget $20,000 just because it's budgeted doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it. So, if it comes down to it, when we work through the budget process, we can put a figure in there as a best guess and then kind of go from there too.
Because maybe it makes sense to get the RFPs kind of in a simultaneous fashion with doing not only a comparison of those RFPs that we receive, but also a comparison with the RPC, and then go ahead and pick what we pick, and if that happens to be under budget, great. So would it make sense to have a motion to develop an RFP to potentially hire a consultant, and then maybe also a second motion, or in the same motion, have a not to exceed $20,000 threshold? Is that enough for a budget request to the city? Would that be appropriate?
I think so.
Yeah,
To me, it would be, yeah.
And I'll be meeting with Matt in the next week or so too, as we start discussing the budget, and we can make sure that that's included in there.
Do you need to do that now or
Yeah.
next month?
Make the motion, Tom. Do you want to? All right.
I was just asking for clarity. What?
Well, so I think if we're going to develop an RFP and get that sent out, what Kyle's indicating is if we're going to do that, we might as well make the request for what we think the upper threshold is going to be, because that's going to take long enough that it'll be past the budget time. Best case scenario, we tell them, hey, we're only going to spend $6,000 because we're going to work with the Regional Plan Commission and only spend $6,000. Worst case scenario is we spend up to 20 and go with a consultant. And I shouldn't say worst case, because we're getting what we want to get out of the deal. We're just ensuring that that's the smart choice out of the options that we have presented.
I'll make a motion that we put together an RFP and with it not to exceed $20,000.
And for the purpose of the minutes, that RFP would be for the hiring of a consultant to develop a park and recreation plan.
Correct. Yep.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Can I ask for a clarification question? Is it the intent to do the RFP then as soon as possible, to release it and possibly come back before the end of the year with responses to be reviewed by this commission?
Yes, I believe so.
Yep.
Okay. Just want to make sure from a timing standpoint that we're working hard to make that happen.
So there's a motion and a second to develop an RFP to hire a consultant for the development of the next iteration of the Park and Rec plan. Any further discussion? Not to exceed $20,000. Any further discussion?
I
All-
just have one more question, kind of unrelated. Sorry. Is there currently an update? You know, we have the one plan that's outdated, but has there been like a spreadsheet, kind of like your goals that you showed, or showing what we have done over the last years? Or does it need to be completely redone, basically, from 2010?
I would say that some of the information in there is still pertinent, but it definitely needs to be updated.
Yeah.
That was during my time. We kind of looked at that plan, and there were some items that were checked off and some items that you said, oh, that's probably not going to happen, or where we changed direction. You guys remember that were here?
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing we'd probably have to update again because of the East Riverbank project and obviously Aquatics.
Well, I think part of the process, too, it makes sense that we ensure we know, because I think that's the starting point, aside from community
Right.
input, is to say, okay, what do we have?
Right.
And what have we done most recently, and how does this tie in then to the next plan? So I think that's part of this process, for sure. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is to review proposals and select a contractor for tree planting this fall to complete the $50,000 urban forestry grant. And in your packet of information, I saw it here, you have a memo and recommendation from Joe Terry. There is two proposals, one from Arbor Vantage for $7,970 to install 22 trees, and one is from McKay, and their proposals for $11,651 to install 25 trees. The recommendation from Joe is to accept the Arbor Vantage Nursery proposal for $7,970 and add additional trees if funding from the existing grant is available to do so. So any conversation or discussion on that?
Have we had experience with either one of these to date?
Yes, we've used both.
And
I would say that I would not be afraid to use either one as far as you're talking quality of work.
Because we're looking at spending all of the 10,000 that's remaining, right?
Correct.
So if we went with Arbor Vantage for $7,970, would you then follow up and just say, hey, do another $2,000 worth of stuff so we get to an even 10?
That's the plan. Don Kissinger would prefer that we use the entire grant. So when they would do the first step of the project, we have other locations, and we would finish the grant money by doing those additional plantings. Highway 34, for instance, going out about 4 or 5 years ago, there's a buffer zone with spruce trees. We lost a lot of those, and that would be our next targeted area.
so if we were to make a motion, would it be better then to say up to $10,000?
I don't think you have to do that, Tom, but you could just say to spend the rest of the grant, bring the grant to zero, whatever difference it's going to be.
Yeah, it does say approximately 10,000.
Right.
So.
Well, I'll make the motion to move ahead with Arbor Vantage Nursery with the intent of spending the remainder of the grant.
There's a motion to move forward with Arbor Vantage Nursery to plant 22 trees at a minimum for a cost of $7,970, as well as spend the balance of the remaining dollars in that grant. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll get a follow-up on what we're doing with that, then?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Item 5, update and possible action on status of the skate park at Winterfield due to recent vandalism. I think we all received an email from a concerned citizen around circumstances at the skate park, and it sounds like law enforcement involvement periodically. I do know that in passing there every day, at least twice, sometimes 3 or 4 times, there's a high number of people using the skate park, not anymore, because I'm guessing it's closed, correct?
It is.
Yeah. And I will also say that every time I go by, it doesn't appear as though kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
In this case, I guess the problem hasn't been at the skate park itself, other than we do have one of the features was damaged to create a safety issue, which we have to repair before we'd reopen. But it's migrated, from the skate park to the bathroom facility at the Aquatic Center,
Yeah.
which is open for their use. And that's where we're having the problems. They're in the picnic tables. But we've actually had some other damage that showed up today down in Veterans Park. So there appears to be a little rash of vandalism going on throughout the park system at this time.
There's cameras at the Aquatic Center, is there not?
Yes, there is.
But not, of course.
And police are reviewing the video, and I'm hoping to get an update from them soon.
And we talked about camera installation at some of the other park facilities.
We have.
Yeah.
We have cameras currently at Sandlot, at the zoo, at the Aquatic Center, and at Robinson Park.
The last time we talked about the skate park, I had our school resource officers meet with a few kids that we could figure out use the skate park with regular frequency. And they said, basically, guys, if you want to keep using it, you're going to have to control yourselves and, your buddies. And that resolved the problem, I think, for a short period of time.
It did.
And then I think in follow-up, I was talking with because this isn't the first time. This is probably in my short time, the third or fourth time that we've talked about the skate park. And most recently, I'm pretty confident, and when I say recently, I'm going to say last year sometime, and the SRO reported to me, well, those typically aren't kids that we have access to. That some of those students are, maybe not attending our schools or not the younger kids that have been using it in the past. I mean, we can certainly engage in that capacity. We have 2 school resource officers, and I plan on emailing them now the skate park's closed, and when the weather turns, it's going to be a short-lived circumstance anyway. But, I mean, I think the idea that people need to play the game and be at least somewhat reasonable utilizing city parks and facilities is the lowest bar you can set. I mean, we're not asking people to, do anything extreme. But when parents, as the gentleman said in the email, can't or won't bring their kids because of swearing and vaping and smoking and so forth, that can't be. And it's not going to rise to the level of law enforcement involved. I mean, you're not going to arrest somebody for swearing and swearing and vaping, but plus law enforcement has bigger things going on than patrolling a bunch of kids at a skate park, but we got to get under control for sure. Is there a recommendation of what, Shane, go ahead.
I was just gonna, Matt and I spoke last week when he kind of updated me on what had been going there. So at that time, we decided that it'd probably be best to close it until tonight and then let Park and Rec Commission decide if they wanted to maintain that closure or how you wanted to go forward for the rest of the year with the skate park.
And I can check with Dawn, but I believe we've had 2 comments. The one obviously tied to this letter that is in your packet, and then we did have a gentleman who is upset that it is closed. So I guess if you want to reopen it, we can reopen it. We'd have to do a repair first, but it's your decision tonight how you want to go forward with this.
How long would the repair take, Matt?
I would say we'd have it done in a day.
Oh, okay.
We could
I
potentially.
guess with the time of the year that we're getting to,
Typically, Tom, we shut down sometime in November, early November. With this repair, we could, if you'd like to, we could potentially be open by Wednesday.
So is it shut down because it needs repair or other issues?
It was twofold. It was shut down because of the incident that happened at the Aquatic Center, because I believe through surveillance, they determined that those kids came from the skate park. And then also the safety factor with the damage.
So I'm not necessarily in favor of closing as a reaction to these things that's happening. There's got to be a solution. Otherwise, why would you ever open it again? So I'm not sure what that answer is. Joe's message here seems to indicate developing a policy or something to aid this, and I don't know if that includes law enforcement or what have you, but I mean, we have these facilities for use, so closing to me is sort of the last resort.
The bathroom incident I found concerning, and the only thing that crossed my mind for this here is a temporary solution, and it's redundant, would be to keep the bathrooms shut at the Aquatic Center and possibly put a porta potty at the skate park.
Well, was the warming house, is that where they went before the Aquatic Center?
Correct.
Okay, and that's, of course, gone, so.
Gone. That's not a permanent solution, obviously, but like I said, when you read that email, it's a little concerning what's been taking place in the bathroom over at the Aquatic Center.
Didn't we have cameras in the warming house, in the bathrooms also?
We have cameras that are projected on the outside of the bathroom area, and I believe they got enough information. Jake, they reviewed those, correct, when you were there? Yeah. So like I said, hopefully there's something forthcoming. We do have to do a little adjusting on the camera. Apparently, they're not catching their face. It's part of the lower body, so we've got to make a little adjustment. But they caught enough to have an idea what we're dealing with and possibly who we're dealing with.
And to clarify, they're not in the bathroom.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, they were in the bathroom.
no, but the cameras.
Oh, no.
Cameras are on the outside of the building,
Correct.
so you can get who goes in.
Correct.
Right, I just don't want anybody thinking that there's
Oh, no,
cameras
no,
in
no.
the bathroom. Number one. Number two, I would argue that, so Chief Blevins apparently was spoken to, and he's got PD going over there on occasion and addressing the groups of kids. I agree, I mean, having things closed indefinitely doesn't make a lot of sense, but on the same hand, kids can't do whatever they want. I mean, I don't understand, I mean, okay, I do understand it, I was a kid once, but just wrecking stuff for the sake of wrecking stuff is just, I mean, how long do you tolerate that before you say, fine? And I think that's the limitations of what we have, because you're not going to keep sending law enforcement officers to the skate park to tell a bunch of kids to knock it off. Where's the parenting involved in this, to be honest with you? But anyway, I would advocate, so what Joe indicates is that they want to place a sign there. To me, it makes sense. You've got a brand-new restroom facility that has been damaged on more than one occasion, that maybe you can't have access to that restroom facility, but at least if there's a porta potty there, there's something that you can use, so they're not going to businesses and things like that they did in the past, and see how things go. I can talk to our school resource officers as well about meeting with kids again, have that conversation, and that in conjunction with the PD doing what they do, maybe we can limp through until there's snow on the ground and things are okay. But what Joe's mentioning too, if you read his update in item number 5 on the memo that he sent with the packet, that they want to address or develop a policy in conjunction with the PD to address the recurring issue, and I would be curious to know what that policy would look like, but clearly I think that would come before us at when that policy would be developed, a draft. Because just repair and open it again and repair it and open it again and repair it and open, I mean,
No, we're chasing our tail. Something's got to change, obviously.
right. And like I said, you're not asking them to do anything that's really tough. So do you need action?
Well, I'm going to make a motion to reopen it
Okay.
as soon as the repair is complete.
What about the
And the-
restroom facility?
Well, you need that as part of the motion,
Well, I think as it stands now, if the skate park's open, the restrooms would be open, and if we want to do one or the other, don't you think?
I would agree with that.
so you want,
You
as
can-
part of the motion,
You
that-
can make a motion to open the skate park and have no bathrooms. You could make a motion to open the skate park and we could put a porta potty up, or you could make a motion to reopen everything and business back to normal.
and you would be advocating the porta potty.
I have no problem repairing the skate park and opening it up, but like I said, when you read that email in those bathrooms, that's pretty concerning to me.
So I'll amend my motion to open the skate park following the repair, and with the addition of utilizing porta potty and not the aquatic center.
We do have pickleball there. Those people do use the bathrooms quite a bit at the aquatic center. So I think we could just maybe change the hours of the bathrooms, have them open by 7, close them by 2. I mean, and then we can still put a porta john by the skate park.
Yeah, there's a ton of pickleball players there,
Yeah.
pretty much every day.
Yeah, so they would not be happy if they
No.
didn't have restrooms.
And I believe we did that today, correct, Jake?
Yeah, I changed the hours on them today. So,
So do staff have to go?
yeah, it's not a very easy thing to do. So,
You open them up by 7 and close them again by 2?
yep. It's all like on a timer.
Makes sense to me. Chris?
Are those the same bathrooms that will be used year-round, like when the skate park or the ice skating is open this winter? Different? Okay.
Those will be different. Those restrooms will be used, if people rent the Rapids room, they use those bathrooms. And the ice skating people would be using the bathrooms in the admissions area. There's 2 restrooms in there.
Because the parking lot-ish area is where the ice rink's going to be, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Other side. So then it would be to reopen the skate park when it's safe to do so, place a porta potty there, and have the Aquatic Center restrooms accessible from 7 a.m. till 2 p.m.
And just so the intent, so people understand, the porta potty is a temporary situation for the rest of the season, obviously. I don't think a full-time porta potty up there next year is the answer, but at least I think that's a solution until we get a policy in place and can address this a little better.
And that gets vandalized and tipped over and whatnot, then we pull that
Pull
out.
it away.
Would that be okay for your motion, Tom, with the hours?
Yeah, I agree.
Is there a second?
I have a question.
Go
Or a
ahead.
comment. With this, if that's the route we'd go, I would recommend that we either include in the motion or would have another motion, that's that we, that the commission directs staff and the PD and I guess whoever to come up with a policy of how to address the situation. And I think to work through, as Craig, as you said, have said, and with the school to educate the people and post on there why it was closed. I think, it's nice to have things like that and to keep them open, but if we keep running into these problems, and it's happened a number of times in your short tenure here, Craig, is that, I'd hate to say it, but if this keeps ongoing, is that we'd be looking at a permanent closure, I would say, instead of, repairing things continually on a yearly basis or semi-yearly basis, whatever it be. Something has to change. I think the users of the park and the parents of the users of the park and that should be made well aware of, and that those that want it open, who are not involved in the damage per se, is that they should be lending support to that, hey, we want this thing open for our kids to be able to use and knock it off. We can't take any more damage as it is to this is going to be, could be permanently closing. I mean, they have to, I think the kids have to be, made aware of, but I think the parents be totally aware of, and I think the policy to include in, if we find out who is, and can prove who is doing damage, that there should be a fine. And obviously, the kids in school or whatever probably can't afford to pay some type of hefty fine or actually pay towards the repair of, or replacement of fixtures and tables and that type of stuff. That I sure think the parents would open their eyes up at seeing what the cost of that type of stuff would be. Not just the $100 fine, but in the case of the tables, could be several $1,000s, or bathroom fixtures and that, it shouldn't be up to the taxpayers of the city to continually put money to replace and repair this stuff. So that would be, if we're going to reopen it, I would strongly suggest that we go along and have that the commission recommend to, and so we can do it as a separate motion and tie it into the motion that's there. So.
Yeah, agreed. I think we can do 2 separate motions as it deals with slightly different topics. The recommendation of Joe, too, would be that a policy would be developed, and I would guess that that policy probably would have to contain language around what happens if you are caught, and let's hope that that law enforcement can identify who these folks are and and implement whatever, means they have access to currently. And if the city council has to consider additional ordinances or modifications in that regard, that's something that can go down the road as well. So let's wrap up the first motion that Tom made, which would be, once again, to refresh people's memory, to reopen the skate park when it's safe to do so, because the repairs are done, and place a porta potty there, and have the aquatic center restroom facilities that the skate park has access to only open from 7 a.m. until 2 p.m. each day. Is there a second for Tom's motion?
I'll second that.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify, is that going to include the weekend, the 7 to 2 on weekends?
What's the recommendation?
I think a weekend situation, I'd rather see him, well, you still got pickleball going on though, so you're almost going to have to do it. I guess it'd be 7 to 2, 7 days a week.
When's most of the problems happening?
Do you remember the time frame on that last video? That was during a holiday weekend, the one, I believe it was a Monday, and I believe it was during the day. I know with school in that dynamic should change, I would hope.
Yeah. And the individual that emailed indicated it happened on the 7th. And I think the 7th was, yeah, it was on Labor Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be 7 days a week then? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, any further discussion? Sorry, I didn't mean to rush it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And secondly, I'll entertain a motion to direct city staff to work with law enforcement, develop a policy around vandalism and at the skate park and aquatic center area.
Also move to that effect, and I think that's drawn up to include, I guess, what I said before, possibility of fines and that type of stuff as part of the policy, maybe.
And Tom, we are seeking restitution on the earlier damage, just so you're aware. The picnic tables. In past instances, we've went for restitution as well. So I think that should become just standard procedure in my mind.
Well, if the policy that we see, the draft is silent on that topic, I think it's pretty clear that we're going to look to have something along those lines inserted. Chris?
This is just a temporary solution until this policy can be developed and help us fix the problem, reopen things.
That's the hope, I think. So Tom made a motion, is there a sec? Tom Rayon made a motion, is there a second?
This is for creating the policy?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second to develop a policy associated with vandalism and damages at the skate park and aquatic center. City staff will work with law enforcement in its development, and the commission, will see a draft at a future meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Review policy for nonprofit rentals of park shelters and determine if policy is applicable to the Rapids Room and other aquatics reservable areas. Who's spearheading that one for us?
That was me. Over here. We've used this policy since 2014, and now the Aquatic Center is kind of different, so I just wanted to be sure before we rent that space to somebody at no cost that that's what the commission would like us to do. So just clarification really on the policy, maybe updated a little bit.
And Joe indicates in his memo, he said, I recommend this policy should not be applicable to the facilities at the recreation center, aquatic center, and the policy should be modified.
No, I'm okay with that myself. So you're wanting to add to this policy to exclude the recreational center?
It's really up to you guys. It doesn't matter to me either way. I just want to have, the information, so if somebody asks, we actually have somebody interested, and I haven't specifically said that they would like it for free, but they are a nonprofit group, so the question might come up.
But as long as we have this policy now,
Right,
if you don't want that to include the recreation center, then we need to update it, right?
right.
Well, I'll move to update the policy, the nonprofit rental policy, to exclude the recreation center.
And then we'd see a recommendation for how those would be?
I think that's already part of the wage, or the fees.
Is that?
You mean the aquatic centers?
Yeah.
I thought we've already established what those rates are.
The fees have been established. I don't know if that could change. I know we're going to be reviewing the,
Oh, they'd be the same as if it was open, you're saying? Because I'm thinking about it from the perspective of, like now, when it's not in operation.
right. Well, the Rapids Room will be open all year for rentals, because that's a heated facility.
It would be,
Yes.
yeah. And that it would fall under the existing policy, which is, yeah, because I was thinking of having it open,
Right,
but that doesn't matter.
right.
Makes sense. So all we need to do, as Tom indicated, is carve it out of existing policy and have it be standalone and take it as it comes. Is there a second? Oh, Shane.
I guess my curiosity is what's the difference of the Rapids Room versus any other facility in the city? If we're gonna, it's only allowing one per year for a nonprofit. Logistically, Matt, is there anything, or Jake, anything different by the rental, or I don't see any difference. So I guess I don't have an issue with adding in the Rapids Room in there. So I'll probably vote no to the motion.
Well, you wouldn't have to make the change to the policy following your line of thought then. It'd already be included.
I guess, yeah, Tom's, yes, correct. I recognize some of Joe's concerns, but, we don't have people from coming around the country wanting to use free space here. And it's only one, and it isn't, there are for nonprofits, very specific abilities to, potentially have a free rental. And have you seen any problems, Dawn, in the last 6 years operating under this policy?
No, we've not had any issues. It's been a minimal amount of rentals. I would say if there's 5 in a year, that would be high.
Okay.
And it's usually like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Master Gardeners. I'm trying to think of other ones. It's not a huge number.
Just as a meeting space, you're saying?
Correct.
And so if we carved it out, they would have to pay $150 a day to use it?
Right. Unless we change those rates, with discussion with the pool for next year.
Yeah, so to me, that gets us in a little bit of a quagmire, because I'm sure it's going to come back here that there should be a higher fee for non-residents versus residents, but yet we're not going to charge for nonprofit.
Well, one of the things maybe you could do is kind of apply the nonprofits like we're going to do the resident, non-resident. If it's a local nonprofit, if you so decide, you could give them the room for no fee. But I guess to Joe's point, if we start having, not saying it'll happen, but if we may get somebody from out of town that wants to have a event there that's a nonprofit, are you still going to give it to them for free?
I mean, otherwise, I guess this could be discussed with the rest of the pool information when it comes up. You could keep it as it is and then just kind of review it at that time. It's really up to you guys.
I could see including the local, because you're worried about local requests, right, Shane?
Yeah, a local, like she said, Boy Scout, Girl Scout troop looking, because they can only do it one time. So it's not like we're providing a meeting space reoccurring for them. So obviously, they must find other spaces, these groups must find other spaces to use on other times.
I'm assuming. Like I said, we don't get a lot of requests for it, but it's just nice to have that information if we do get a call about it.
I would have no issue with local nonprofits using it. I mean, that makes sense. That's what it's there for.
Well, I sort of like the idea of reviewing it all in one with all the other fees. And if somebody was asking for that today, they wouldn't pay for it the way the policy is written now.
Right.
So I will just rescind my motion.
So what we'll do is not take any action on that, let it sit as is until such time as we have an opportunity to review the fees and possibly modify the fees to waive fees for local nonprofits. Is that an accurate statement? All right. So then you don't need anything on that topic, right, Don?
Correct. Nope, that's fine. Thank you.
Update on zoo projects.
I believe at the last meeting, there was a request to see where we were with the Teskey gift fund. So we threw some numbers together, and due to a problem, when it happened to be at the time we were switching to the Munis system, some items didn't get coded correctly. So I can't say this is 100% accurate. To the best of our ability at this time, it looks like there's about $288,000 left in that gift for the zoo. And upcoming projects that we want to get done are that pen rebuild that currently houses the parrots, the pond paint and repair, and the entrance rebuild. I don't know that we'll get all those done this year. Hopefully we can get one this fall and one this spring with any luck. We probably, on the pond, we'll go to an outside contractor for that, but if we have crew available, we probably will do the rebuild of that pen and the entrance if possible.
Is that what this sheet is, Matt?
Right, that's showing what's left of the gift fund, what was spent and what the remaining total is.
Okay, you don't have estimates on what the projects you're talking about now are going to be?
No,
Oh, okay.
but there was a request, I guess, I don't know if that was you, Tom, that wanted an idea what kind of money was left in that fund and what we had spent. But basically, this relates to the project we did in the spring on that bear pen rebuild. So it's more of an informational thing, I guess, and then just a suggestion, those are the three projects that we feel need to be done.
So that'd be upcoming.
Correct.
Any other questions from anybody on that topic?
Did you say you're looking at doing something this fall yet?
Possibly that pond we could get painted yet if the weather holds. And then last year as a winter project, we did that bear pen, and I would assume this year if it's a low, no snow time, doesn't get too cold, we can maybe do some of those other projects.
All right, any other zoo questions? Preliminary discussion on Park and Rec budget for 2021.
So I believe Tom had requested the latest update on our expenditures for 2020, and Dawn included that in the packet. And 2021, we have not met yet, as Shane indicated, we are going to be meeting this week or next week sometime, and then we can start getting our preliminary numbers for 2021 dialed in. And obviously, if any of the Park Commission members would like to be part of that, I believe they're more than welcome, correct, Shane?
Yeah, we can have something preliminary for Park and Rec review in the first meeting in October. And then any questions or concerns, or if there's a project idea at that point for next year that the commission has and wants to add to it, we can wrestle with that then.
The city's fiscal year is January to December.
Correct.
I do have a question on the financials, and thanks for providing them, but it wasn't clear to me, the Aquatic Center on here, what the accounts were. I mean, I can see Winterfield but I'm not sure what the Aquatic Center is, or if it's even included here.
I don't think that was included in a conventional manner because there really wasn't a detailed budget for the Aquatic Center for this year. I think, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, Shane, but he basically created a fund, but it really wasn't broken down because we really had no idea where we were going to be at.
Correct. I think, I have to apologize, I don't remember for sure from last year's, because there wasn't technically a budget presented last year. And so I think they allocated 130,000 seems to stick in my brain for the operational end of the Aquatic Center. And just looking in here, I see like concession stands outlined on page 8. It looks like it's got Aquatic Center.
Yeah. 186,000 for operations and maintenance, 23,388 for concessions,
Correct.
seasonal labor, 22. Yeah, it's pages 8 and 9.
So I kind of took the approach that unfortunately, being that we've had pools, but we can kind of forecast what that was going to cost to operate our pools. But this year we kind of went into it unfortunately it was a trial run, and so we didn't know what things were going to cost. And then more importantly, it was an opportunity to work on procedures and kind of get those dialed in, and staff can kind of understand how to operate the facility. And Jake this year got to see, work with the chemicals and some of those type of activities that go on there for cost. And we can, even next year, it's going to be kind of a guess because we don't know what next year is going to bring for the amount of staff that is going to take, and even with the patron load, what it's going to do to the chemicals. So even next year is going to be a guess, and then hopefully after next year, if we can have a normal year next year, we'll have a better understanding on costs for the year after, and be able to kind of dial it in a little bit better.
Makes
Also,
perfect
there are
sense.
some more expenses that are still out there. I know I'm waiting for a statement from concessions for the purchase of the food for the month of August, I believe, still needs to be on there.
We also have some credits coming yet.
Yes.
We returned unused acid barrels that weren't open, and we're working on a plan with Valley to see what they can do for the chlorine that's still in the storage tanks as far as the return goes. They typically don't do that, but being that it's a brand-new facility, the tanks are clean, and they're the ones that delivered it, they're not too concerned. Typically, they won't do that in an older facility because of contamination.
Let's hope we have a normal year.
That would be nice.
Any other questions on the Park and Rec budget for 2021? So I'll ask my own question. When then will this committee see a proposed budget? Probably sometime November, December?
October, I would think.
October.
Oh, by October?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
October or November, right?
Yeah. So right now, just to kind of give you, so each department makes their budget, and kind of not with a lot of guidelines, just kind of operating. We can figure out expenses on salaries and benefits, and then and some of those operational. So each department head's tasked with kind of putting together what they think it's going to cost next year. And next week, Tim and I are going to start meeting with each department heads to kind of go through it together. And then eventually it'll be compiled together after that. And hopefully it'll be a balanced budget off the bat, but I doubt it. And then by the time October hits, there should be a pretty good indication of where the budgets are citywide. And that's when our finance committee will start reviewing each individual budget also, and just kind of take a look at projects. But by October, we should have a Park and Rec for you guys to go through.
Got it. Thank you. Anything else on the budget development? So no actions required on that agenda item. Update on Aquatic Rec Center?
Jake, you want to tell them where you're at with the shutdown? And
We're still working with Badger Pool on the winterizing. We pretty much go as fast as they do because they're training us. So they're here, I think, up till Wednesday for the final winterizing. And then we're done with that part. And then we're still putting cabanas back into storage. Last week we couldn't, 'cause all the rain, we didn't want to put them wet. So I'd say we have everything, would be wrapped up this week on winterizing and putting everything away for winter.
And then it just basically sits there.
part of it, I mean, we'll be shifting gears with the Rapids room with rentals, and then sometime in November, we'll start getting our game plan together for a skating rink over there, so.
Any other questions? All right. Tom, did you review the bills? Tom?
Yes, I did.
All right.
They're okay with me. I just like clarification on, I think the Valley Aquatic Solutions, the zoo materials, and the Valley Aquatic Solutions chemicals. Is that what you were referring to before, Matt?
Yes, they're our supplier for all the pool chemicals, and they also supply the controllers and the chemicals for the pond at the zoo.
So with the chemicals there, it's 8/19/29, is that what you're talking about, possibly getting back?
I believe the credit was going to be almost $400, and then there was an $800 credit for the acid in the 15-gallon barrels.
Okay, that's probably, okay. I'd move that we accept the bills.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second to accept and pay the bills. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Staff reports.
I don't know if Dawn emailed you the written report or not, but as we all know that there was, just a reminder, there was no summer recreation classes for youth. They were all canceled due to COVID. We did close the Aquatic Center on Sunday, August 23rd for the season. The zoo closed Sunday, August 30th for the season. Our zoo programs were canceled as well. We did not do story time or the co-sponsored programs with Macmillan Library. We did do some virtual zoo chats with our staff. I also had an attached zoo report that was attached with the numbers and stuff in comparison of the past years. We are going ahead this fall and winter with our program offerings. I will not be offering any of the youth sports for the fall with the COVID, but we are offering a variety of different art classes for some children and adults using a larger classroom and social distancing and wearing masks, putting some social, some safety guidelines in place that I've talked with Wood County Health Department. We also plan on running the basketball, volleyball, and pickleball leagues with some structured guidelines from Wood County Health Department. We are also currently accepting applications for different seasonal employment positions. We're looking for babysitting, basketball scorer and timer, pickle attendants, volleyball sub-referees, and ice pond attendants for this upcoming season. Our fall activity guide has been distributed to participants through email, and I did submit a referral for recreational season employee wages. There was some of them that hadn't been updated since 1999. I believe that will go, I met with HR earlier in September, or at the end of August, and I believe once it goes through council, hopefully then some of those wages will be up to date with some of the other programs with the pool and stuff that we are offering. So we're hoping to snag a few more applicants and for ice pond attendant. For example, last year we only had one person that applied. So we're hoping with a higher wage, hopefully that will get some other employees to apply for some of the seasonal positions.
I'll come out of retirement.
Yes, Tom, you can apply.
Oh, yeah.
Just a comment, I've heard some really good comments about the pickleball courts at Witter. They really like them. Is that tennis court getting used, or?
There's a group that do play tennis
Yeah.
that I have seen there, but the pickleball, yeah, they've sent emails and they've called, and they're extremely happy with the pickleball courts that are there. They're used mornings and in the evenings. There's a few groups that come and play, so they are extremely happy.
Are those folks used to those bathrooms being open?
The pickleball players?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm not sure about the evening ones. I haven't touched base with too many of them, but most of them in the morning. I do know that they go over there because they usually get there around 8 in the morning. They're usually there until noon
We'll have
playing.
to keep our ears open to see if we're getting feedback.
I can reach out to that group too.
You know what I mean? Because this recent action with closing you can't, well, is that lit? That's not lit, is it?
There's lights there.
Oh, there is. So they
It's
can
lit.
play pickleball clear.
They can play till 11 o'clock.
Well, thankfully, I'm not by there at that time. Not every night, but, okay. Well, that'll be a piece that I think we should pay attention to. Because of course, the goal isn't to not let.
Okay. Craig?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the Rafters were playing one night, and I wasn't at the game, but I was strolling through outside the Aquatic Center and was over by the pickleball courts, and there's an older gentleman who was there, and he was walking around it and whatever, so we struck up a conversation. Well, then as we went on, I told him who I was and the alderman and whatever, and thanked us for all we did with that there and with the pickleball courts and that, because he does play it and that. He did have a request, and I see there are some benches, I think, or chairs there, if I remember now, but he asked if there could be a picnic table put outside, and there are the picnic tables that are close by, but he asked outside the gate, but that was before there were anything to sit on there, so, so if the courts were full or they were waiting, that they'd have a place to sit down and talk with each other, so I don't know if,
I know there was some pickleball players that had asked for if they could bring in their chairs and stuff, and I kind of swayed them away from it because new courts were built in Wausau recently, and they brought the chairs in, the canvas chairs, the fold-up ones that you carry around to soccer games, football games, and they were putting them on the courts, and because they hadn't cured long enough,
Yep.
when they put the chairs down to sit down while they're waiting to play, it left indentations and holes in their courts. So I had gotten word out to the pickleball players that for at least the first year, we weren't allowing any of those
No.
chairs because a lot of them will set them up inside along the fence line and stuff.
okay, yeah.
But I haven't heard anybody mention that they,
Okay. Yeah, and one of the current concerns he had, which I guess I hadn't thought of, and that's why he wanted something outside the fence, is because till it's totally cured and whatever, that it can damage the surface. And so that's why I'll bring that up. And maybe we should have something there that the seating and that is done outside for now.
Shane?
Yeah, Matt and I had spoken on this also earlier about Mead Field. And I think on our list that we should talk about maybe next month during budget is redoing those courts there and make those into pickleball courts, or adjusting that over there, because the courts, something needs to be done about that court over there. And next year probably would be the right time to do it with the budget.
Yeah, those are almost unusable, right?
Correct.
Basically.
Yes.
For tennis, we have quite a few people that use the Lincoln High School courts, which are nice, and I've seen tennis on the new, that's only one court there, correct? Yeah, but that whole facility over by the Aquatic Center is great. And if you did a few more pickleball courts plus another tennis court or two at Mead, that'd be amazing. All right. Anything else with, oh, Matt, you didn't do your staff report yet. Sorry.
I'll make it quick. We already touched on the winterization at the Aquatic Center. It's in progress. Hopefully it'll be done within a week or so. Zoo winterization, we've started on that as well. Splash pad shutdown, we began on that today. We're still mowing every day, about 1 to 3 units, so it's down a little bit. The grass did slow down some, but we're still out every day. Flower baskets were taken down after that huge rainstorm, and then the cold nights, they started looking pretty rough. So the decision was made to pull the flower baskets, and we shut the watering system off. We'll be shutting down the other sprinkler systems in this coming week. Tree trimming and removals are continuing on for the plow list for this winter. Some maintenance items, we had to do a roof repair at Centralia. Clearwater pit here at City Hall, and the garage door were, in the garage were some of the major ones, and then obviously smaller stuff in various buildings. We got a auction listed today for the engineering department. Back in the days when Dave Laspa and Mike Weiler were here, they were savers, and they're doing a little rearranging up there, and they found all sorts of stuff in there that is no longer being used. So we've got a auction listed for some of their items, and we're working on Centralia. We had a meeting trying to get a strategy together for a soft reopening there. So we've been trying to prep the building, taking into account the, the COVID situation, shutting bubblers off, adding hand sanitizers, and trying to make decisions on what programs we're going to run. So we've been working on that.
All right, any questions for Matt?
Matt, would that be, with the Centralia Center, would that be then, encouraging, I guess, the 6-foot distance and that type of stuff? And
Absolutely. All of Joan's programs that she wants to do have taken all that into account.
Okay.
Some of the larger, things that they used to do, like the bingo, they can't. There's just
Okay.
no way they can social distance and have the kind of numbers that they had. But they're going to have some of their smaller activities, and she's got a pretty good list together. We looked it over. I think she did a pretty good job
Yeah.
picking programs that can still be, responsible and have the social distancing, and then still give them an opportunity to get out, have some fun.
And I'd strongly encourage that, because it's the age group that uses the facility is in the higher risk than others. Everybody's in risk, but higher risk with the elderly like that, so that I totally encourage to follow the guidelines like that. So keep it as safe, because that's what we want to do. We don't want to have to,
She's got a bunch.
we don't want to have to shut it down.
Yeah, she's got a
That's-
bunch of
that's-
safety factors in place for
Okay.
this, so.
And just with the aquatics, I think is, if my memory's right, I think the company that was involved, with actually the shutting it down, the draining and winterizing, weren't they? I think. And I think they come back, if my memory's right, again in the spring to help with the startup. But after that, at least I think as the contract goes, we're going to be on our own. So our guys will be,
That's correct.
I guess, refreshing or totally learning again to take it on the spring after, but next fall actually to shut it down. So that's, okay. I guess that was information for the commission too, so that's all.
You'd remain to have access for them for resources and answer questions, right?
Yes.
Oh, I think it's worth mentioning, we also got a daily pass sales summary report that the Aquatic Center took in $36,772 this year. I think given circumstance, that number is, if this were a normal year, clearly it wouldn't be that low. But at least there's some revenue to offset some of the costs of operation of the facility, and not anywhere near where it should be. But again, this is not a normal year. So I wanted to share that. And the other thing I think worth mentioning before we adjourn is that Joe Terry had forwarded an email to the commission that he had a conversation with a private pilot or something like that had flown into the airport here. And I'm not sure how the word got to him or how the conversation transpired, but basically this gentleman ended up telling him paying high compliments to the city, noticing how clean and well-appointed the facilities are, and the parks and the amenities and so forth. And frankly, as a person that is relatively new to the area and that likes to do stuff outside, including run, one of the areas that I ran on Sunday morning with my wife has to do with parking down by the bridge across from Aspirus there. And I never remember the names of the park because I haven't lived in town long enough. That park's called?
Demets.
Yeah, so start there and then head north and keep on going till you feel like turning around. And frankly, it's gorgeous to be running in a city and involved in the area here is outstanding. And it's nice to hear a compliment from a gentleman that really has no business even providing one. I mean, there's no reason to say that aside from the fact that he noticed it. And that speaks to the city and the things that our city employees are doing and the things we got going. So wanted to share that, make sure that we pointed that out. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
One quick thing I'd just like to mention. Some of you, I don't know if you've met Jake Klingforth yet. This is, I believe, his first time at a Park and Rec meeting. Jake is going to be my successor, and we're just trying to get him familiar with everybody and on board with our procedures, and so kind of a welcome aboard, Jake, kind of a thing here. So
Maybe a little bit about you, Jake? Maybe you can tell them a little bit about you with your background and experience?
Grew up here in Wisconsin Rapids. Went to college down in Milwaukee. Worked for Milwaukee County Parks. I was a supervisor there for 12 years. We had an opportunity to move back here. They worked for City of Point for 2 years, and then got a position here with the City of Rapids, and that's where I am now. So super excited and happy to be back in the community that I grew up in. So
Yeah, very cool.
Good to have you.
thanks. Good to be here.
You're super stoked to be at a Park and Rec Commission meeting, huh?
Yeah, yes. I couldn't sleep last night.
It's a great. Oh, that's fantastic. I apologize to the viewers for laughing that loud into the microphone. But yeah, I know where you're coming from. You can follow me. I'm going to the board meeting now for 6 o'clock if you want to come. School board, come on. It'll be a lot of fun. All right, with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? Second. Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.